So I have a question from a viewer. We've done a bunch of these on the Army side about like kind of what's the difference between being a Ranger and being in Delta, or being like a Green Beret and being in Delta. Can you explain to the audience like kind of the pipeline from being a in like SEAL Team 8 or SEAL Team 2 to like going to development group, and kind of what sets those two things apart?
For every special forces, it's the same sort of layout. There is a selection that's really difficult, designed to sort of break the spirit and find out who has the most willpower to not quit, and then they get trained up after that into their skills, and there's performance based stuff. And so same thing with the SEAL teams, is like that's just our version of that is buds. And then there's the training that comes after buds, where you sort of learn your baseline skills, and then it's not over after that. Like I said, you go to your team, and like, you're not in the brotherhood, but we thought we were. We ran around, San Diego punching tridents in our chest way too early. And then you get there and they're like, hey guys, that's not how it works. And you've got to still go through some time of getting vetted and accepted and validated into your little team. And then you're in the brotherhood if you get through that. And then generally it's like it changes over time, but it's like it depends on what's going on in the world also, with wars and combat and conflicts, that you generally are expected to do a couple deployments or platoons, which could equate to like 4 or 5 years in the teams. There's opportunities to go like augment different tier 1 units. And that's a good experience. That's how I met the guy who mentored me into doing it.
So you were augmented to DEVGRU before you went to DEVGRU.
Yes, for 4 months. And I was with this guy who was in a squadron that I considered my mentor at that point, right? And honestly, I think that once I went through selection for DEVGRU, I didn't, this might just be my own mind, but you get drafted into a team, and I was, like I said, I was average, man. But I got through everything the first time through my whole career, all my selections, all my courses, and some of them I got a little close, but I always made it without having to repeat or anything. Which I'm kind of proud of myself for that or whatever. But in selection, I was also, I think, somewhere in the middle, or even maybe a little below the middle, right? And then I made it through, and then it was always my goal to improve and become better. But I feel like my mentor like realized where I was at with that and was like, oh, he's not a top draft pick, so we're not going to, I didn't end up in the same team or squadron or whatever. But it might have also just been by chance. I still don't know to this day. But yeah, so you can screen to go there after that time in the teams, right? And there's a psychological, physical, all this stuff you have to go through. And then reputation stuff. They'll find out about how, like, your reputation, and then then they'll say thumbs up, you get to go to selection, or thumbs down, you don't get to go, and you can try again in a couple of years or whatever. And so there's that whole process. And then fast forward like a year or whatever, you start selection, and you got to get through that. So that's an ordeal. And then same thing, you're not done when you get through that. You still have to be vetted and validated by your small little team, and then you're in that brotherhood, that version of the brotherhood, right?
Would you, from your personal experience, what was more difficult, the selection to get into SEAL Team 6 or buds to just become a Navy SEAL, period?
DEVGRU selection was harder in my opinion. Because buds is very hard physically. It breaks down your body, right? And there's the mental aspect to that. But then fast forward to that, to like DEVGRU selection, and it's a daily mental fuck and a daily mental grind of performance, and you're competing against other experienced SEALs. It's just hard.
Are you able to say, and if you can, it's not, I know that there's always numbers that float around of like 50% make it, or what, and they say, Delta has this attrition rate. If you get to selection for DEVGRU, do you have a good shot of getting into SEAL Team 6, or do most people get to selection and wash out and go back to the regular SEAL teams?
I don't know what the percentage is. I just know my own experience, really. And it was like, we started with like, I want to say we started with like 70-ish experienced guys from the teams, and we finished with like 30. So it's like a 30% or like a, 70%, something like that.
Yeah.
Right.
Um,
Buzz is higher because you start with more people.
right. And then you
Depends on
get,
what season you're in and everything. But that's honestly, I don't know. My answer to that question might be, I might want to change it back to, it's like it's equally hard in different ways. They're both, it's like it's just that was farther away from me in my memory. It's almost like Buds was a blur, and this was more recent. But now I'm starting to go back to like, dude, there were some hard things that I didn't think I was gonna get through.
we have a big question coming up here that I know you're going to have a ton of fun with. Before we get into it, it's going to be the next one. When it comes to staying at a tier 1 unit, I've interviewed a lot of guys from the Army side, and they're like, we've had guys who've been fired for negligent discharges. We've had guys who've been fired because I don't even know what this means, but they threw around outside of the A zone in a training exercise, and they got removed from the unit. And like they say it's the hardest job in the world to get, and it's the easiest one to lose.
Yeah.
When it comes to SEAL Team 6, is it similar? Like, what's a basic thing you could screw up and you find yourself out the door?
Yeah, those for sure, or multiples of those, or two of those. Like, yeah, so like there's some mistakes that you just can't make, right? So it's not like out here in real life where like you're supposed to be going through life and making mistakes and learning. It's such a high, it's the highest, most elite level of accountability that ever exists. And that's why it's so hard to separate from, especially the guys there in their minds too, with us guys that separate from it. It's almost like they feel betrayed or something. But yeah, there's just certain ones you can't do, and the ND one is for sure one of them. Like you just can't. So, yeah. And then the one you said about out of the A zone, like maybe that's true. I don't know what it's like for them. I've never, I wasn't. It's different, probably a little bit different nuances between the tier 1 units, but my opinion about that one is like there was some other underlying stuff going on as well, right? And that was just like, it's like a marriage, like, oh, they got divorced because he never did the dishes, and you're like, there's
Yeah, little more to that story.
Yeah, that's just the thing. Yeah.
Is it possible? Do guys ever get removed for just being a bad fit? Like maybe they made it through selection, maybe they even did a deployment, but it's like this guy is just not. He's just not who this is just not a good fit. If that happens, how do they handle a situation like that?
Yeah, there is definitely that. And I think that that's just dependent on where they are at in time with each team, because it goes through. I'll get into this and maybe at this next question, but I think it just depends on what's going on in there. For sure, there's been some toxic versions of that I actually went and apologized to somebody that we did that to, and it was like we still needed to do that, but we didn't have to do it in a just make that dude feel shitter. Just like, hey, you just aren't performing good enough, and you just don't fit in with the team, right? It's just like an NBA team. You have a guy you draft, and you're like, he's just not meshing with the team, and actually is a hindrance too, which could be dangerous. We've learned that lesson before. So that's why it's so important to actually act on that and actually do something about it. But my opinion is just that there's like, take the fucking bullshit judging, try to make the guy feel like a piece of shit thing out of it, and still do what you need to do.